What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to have a big old update about Starter Deck 7, that yellow Starter Deck, the one which in fact is introducing yellow into the One Piece card game. And I say a very big update because we've literally got the whole set list. We have got every single card has been revealed. We've got translations. We know every single card from the yellow starter deck, and I, for one, am delighted. Translations here, partly from me, partly to Helio from the Discord. And as usual, shout out to lovely Orange Samurai D for making them nice and easy to find, and honestly, just being a generally lovely dude. Cool. Alright, so I suppose we need to start off, that seems like the most sensible thing to do, by having a look at the leader. Now, the leader, of course, here is Charlotte LINLIN. 5 cost 5,000 power, but we've got a monocolor leader, so that is to be expected. And what we've got is, when attacking, Dawn X2, you may add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life to your hand. That gives you a card advantage. You've then got more cards in hand than you used to. That's a good thing. And then if your life is at 2 or less, you may place up to 1 card from your hand to the top of your life area. Obviously, if you just keep taking life, you will lose. That's a bad thing. So in the early game, it gives you a card advantage, and in the mid to late game, it lets you cycle through your life a bit. You are taking, but you're also replacing. But remember, of course, when you're putting cards back on top of your life area, you can put cards there that have a trigger, some we're going to see in a moment, for instance, and then you can basically get an extra card and then put a card with trigger on top of your deck, knowing that when your opponent takes a life, the trigger is going to, well, trigger, and this is a good thing. And this is one of the things yellow does. Manipulates your life, means you get used to your triggers more easily. Job's a good un. So we might as well go through in cost order, which is how I generally tend to do it. We do have a couple of vanilla characters, ones which we kind of were expecting. So we've got Charlotte Anana, that's just your 1 cost 3,000 power counter plus 1,000. And then we've got Charlotte FLAMPÉ, which is your 2 cost 4,000 power counter plus 1,000. Your vanilla card, this is the way they work. They have a power 2 more than their cost, counter plus 1,000, and they're generally fairly uninspiring. Now, Charlotte Pudding is one we've previously seen, and what we got with Charlotte Pudding here is counter plus 2,000. Always a good thing, we like counter plus 2,000. And on play, you look at up to 1 life on the top of your or your opponent's life area and put it either on the top or bottom of the life area. So this is what I'm talking about with stacking your life. Essentially, if you've got a card with trigger, keep it. If your opponent's got a card with trigger, get rid of it. And then the other way round. It means you can maximize your use of trigger, which is a big thing seemingly for yellow, but also it means you can try and stop your opponent if that's the kind of thing they're trying to do. It is a card that I like very much indeed. Now, speaking of these cards with trigger, Charlotte BRULÉE is, I believe, one of the best of them. 3 cost 1,000 power, however, it's got blocker and a trigger that lets you play this card. So this is one that I think you're going to want to put on top of your deck with these kind of skills, on top of your life, with these kind of skills a lot, because essentially it plays for free and it's got blocker, so it's a way to get a blocker on the field without having to pay any Don to do so. I occasionally say memory in One Piece videos, clearly that's Digimon, but you're paying Don here, free Don, or if you can put it on top of your life, no Don. And this is one of the things I love about yellow. And sure, it's only got 1,000 power, blah, 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 nobody cares. At the end of the day, it's going to go down, but you're going to save an attack while you do so. And if you're stopping an opponent's attack without having to have expended any resources whatsoever, that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me at all, ladies and gentlemen. Now, sticking with free cost, we've also got Charlotte MONT. We've got free cost 4,000 power counter plus 1,000. Activate main, you may rest this card and add the top or bottom of your life to your hand and KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. Now, good news is this gives you card advantage. Bad news is this is just taking cards out of your life. It doesn't put them back, it doesn't swap them, it just takes cards out of your life. There's only so many cards you can take out of your life before you've got no life left and your opponent just attacks and wins a game. This is something you've got to be very careful about, but it's still a useful card for getting you extra cards. Plus you get to KO an opponent's character, often a blocker. That's a good thing. As a trigger, you can play this card, but you do have to trash a card from your hand first in order to do so. Now, there are a bunch of free cost characters. Zeus is another one. Free cost, 3,000 power, counter plus 1,000. And activate main, you can rest this card and give up to one of your Charlotte LINLIN banish for the turn. And then as a trigger, you play this card. And it just says one of your Charlotte LINLIN, so this would be either leader or character, either would be fine. But then we've also got Prometheus, free cost, 3,000 power, counter plus 1,000, play it as a trigger, very similar to Zeus. You'll notice the artwork on those cards matches up quite nicely. And activate main, you may rest this card and up to one of your Charlotte LINLIN gains double attack for the turn. So you rest them both and you get double attack with banish. Banish being when you knock one of your opponent's life off, trigger doesn't activate. And of course, we've got cards here that can allow us to see what the top card of our opponent's life is. So if you know they've got a really good card on top of their life of a really good trigger, that's when you can activate banish, make sure it doesn't work, and then just kind of laugh at your opponent in a nice, friendly, competitive spirit kind of way, but that's going to help you out massively. Now, Peccoms is another one of your vanilla characters, free cost, 5,000 power, counter plus 1,000. I have nothing really to add about this. It's not a terribly exciting card. Moving up to our 4-cost cards here, we've got Charlotte Daifuku. And what we've got here is 4-cost, 5,000 power, counter plus 1,000. Don X1, when attacking, you may add one card from the top or bottom of your life to your hand, and place up to one card from the top of your deck at the top of your life area. Now, this is great. It's a bit more expensive as a card goes, obviously. But here, you're getting card advantage, but you're not getting life disadvantage. And I love it. Because you're not putting a card down from your hand, which means you keep the cards you got in your hand, you just gain an extra one. But you also get to put a card at the top of your life. Now, the card you put at the top of your life is random. It's just from the top of your deck. But it could have a good trigger. If you know you don't have a card on top of your deck with a good trigger, then just take one from the bottom, and then this will allow you to put a card at the top that may or may not have a trigger. If you used a previous card, something like Charlotte Puddin', for instance, to look at the top card of your life, and you realise you've got a really good card that you want in your hand, Charlotte Daifuku will get that card out of your life into your hand and replace it with a random card. And this is how the deck starts to work together pretty gosh darn beautifully. And then we just have one more vanilla character, and then that's it. We're out of vanilla characters at this point. We have got ourselves Baron Tamago, 4-cost, 6,000 power, counter plus 1,000. No more to say about that. You know how these things work by now in terms of your vanilla characters. Now, the first super rare we've got, because some cards are designated as super rares, is your Charlotte KAKAKURI. 4-cost, 6,000 power. On play, look it up to one life from the top of your or your opponent's life, and put it either at the top or bottom of the life area. It's Charlotte Puddin's skill. But then, if you have fewer life cards than your opponent, this character gains Rush. So you can attack the turn you play it. Bearing in mind, as a general rule, because you're playing yellow and we've seen all these skills that take your life, you probably are, for the majority of the game, going to have less life than your opponent. The way yellow works is kind of manipulating your life, taking advantage of having less life, etc., and then kind of winning at the end. So you know what? Yeah, this sounds good to me, ladies and gentlemen. This sounds very, very good to me. Now, we do then have a 5-cost character. We've got Charlotte Snack. 5-cost, 6,000 power, and Don X1, when attacking, you may add the top or bottom card of your life to your hand, and then this character gains Banish and 1,000 power for the battle. And the battle here is really, really important, because if it gains the power for the turn, then being able to restand this character will then give you extra attacks with the extra power and Banish. Not the case. But you're going to have 7,000 power plus Banish. That's pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be able to do a little bit of damage, and I like this. Honestly, this sounds pretty good to me. I can get on board with this. Now, we then see the second of the secret rare characters. This is your Charlotte LINLIN, not the leader, obviously, the character. And here we got a 7 cost 8,000 power. It is the biggest character in the deck. And on play, your opponent chooses one of the following effects. Either you trash one life card from the top card of your opponent's life area, or you put a card from the top of your deck onto your life. So your opponent gets the choice. But either you gain a life or your opponent loses a life. And sure, your opponent is going to do what's most advantageous for them. If they feel good about their attacking threat, they're going to give you an extra life. If they don't, they're going to kind of give up one of their own. If they've got loads of blockers, for instance, that might be something they're willing to do. But either way, this is still essentially giving you a one life advantage when you play it. And don't forget, we've got Zeus and Prometheus that can beef this up. So you then end up with an 8,000 power character with Banish and double attack. This is your game ender. One Piece decks generally play a big game ender for late in the game. Remember, you're gaining 2 Don a turn. So you get to the end portion of the game. You want a big bad character to finish it off and win. This is it for this particular deck. Now, we do have a couple of event cards here. We got Soul Pocus. It is a 5 cost event card. It does the same thing as both a main and a trigger. And your opponent chooses one of the effects. Your opponent trashes the top card of their life or place the top card of your deck on top of your life area. Yeah, it's Charlotte LINLIN, the character. It's that as a 5 cost event card. But it does the same thing as a trigger. And this is why when we start looking at these new cards, we started looking at this yellow deck, I've been telling you all the way along, we need to see more yellow cards to figure out exactly how this works. Because now I'm looking at Charlotte LINLIN, the leader, and I'm like, hang on a second. If I use that skill when my life's at 2 or less, I get to choose a card from my hand and put it on top of my life. So you'd better believe I am never planning to play Soul Pocus from my hand. Like, there'll be games that I do, obviously, but I'm never going to be planning to do that. My aim is going to be to get it on top of my life and make my opponent trigger it. Obviously, if you're playing against a deck with Banish, that will change things, because Banish will stop it activating. But this is how a deck like this works, and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, it is a thing of absolute beauty. We've then got a 1 cost event card, Power Mochi. It's a counter. Look it up to 1 card on the top of your opponent's life and place it at the top or bottom of your opponent's life. So basically, you get to look at the top card and then either keep it or get rid of it. Either way, it sounds good to me. And then up to one of your leaders or characters gains 2,000 power for the battle. Not bad for a 1 cost card. As a trigger, you draw a card and look at up to 1 card on the top of your opponent's life and then put it back at the top or bottom of their life. And then we've got a stage Queen Momma Chanter. 2 cost. As a trigger, you play this card. And it's got an activate main, rest this stage. You may add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life to your hand, and then place up to one of your characters that costs 3 on top of the owner's life area face up. Cool. And we've got a bunch of 3 cost characters with trigger. Zeus and Prometheus, Charlotte MONT, Charlotte BRULÉE. All 4 of those cards are 3 cost characters in this deck with a trigger. So yeah, that sounds good to me, ladies and gentlemen. That sounds pretty good to me. I like this deck as a whole. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that I personally am going to be able to play. This seems like the kind of thing which is a little bit too dicey for me. I don't know if I've got the nerve to play this kind of deck, but I love that we've got a new color that plays very differently, very similar indeed to, well, a lot of similarities at least to yellow in the Digimon TCG, and I'm all over it, frankly, ladies and gentlemen. I am loving it. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.